Good afternoon, legal AFers. Good afternoon, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. We just finished the Trump criminal trial, day 12. We are in week number 4. Yes, it may have been a little bit more boring today in terms of no one was really crying like we saw Hope Hicks do on Friday. Perhaps the witnesses weren't as overtly compelling, but Karen, I think you called it perfectly this morning and last week. This is where we get into the falsification of business records portion now that the prosecution has established the attempts to interfere with the 2016 election portion of the case for the first 3 weeks. So first 3 weeks, right, you get David Pecker, you get Keith Davidson, Hope Hicks, statements that Donald Trump was making during the campaign. You show the stakes. Why would he do that? Then week 4, it begins with Jeff McConney, Deborah Tarasoff as witnesses, the controller, accounts payable, the people who handled the money, the people who handled the checks. How was it that Donald Trump would approve invoices, the process and procedure? How do you link this to Donald Trump? That's what went down today with 2 witnesses, McConney and Deborah Tarasoff. We'll talk about those witnesses today, how important they were. Here's the daily scorecard that we create for everybody keeping track. I hope you all are saving photos of these daily scorecards so you know what's happening each day. You can go back and say, what happened on day 6? What happened on day 7? Trump trial, day 12. We're in week 4. Here's what went down. In the morning, Donald Trump was held in criminal contempt for the 10th time specifically as it related to one of the 4 statements the prosecution was seeking to hold him in contempt for. It's the statement that related to Trump saying the jury is unfair, the jury are all Democrats, which, by the way, is false. The judge said that that harms the ability to maintain law and order in the courtroom. Trump was held in contempt for the 10th time. And the judge warned, Justice Merchan warned Donald Trump that, look, I'm going to have no choice next time. You're going to go to jail. Do you understand? I didn't want to have to throw you in jail. I don't take delight in throwing you in jail, but that is what is going to have to happen if you violate this gag order again. Do you understand, Mr. Trump? Then we had the testimony from Trump's controller, former controller, who worked at the Trump organization for 40 years. Jeff McConney testified. Karen, what I found to be very notable is that Donald Trump's lawyers, when they heard McConney was going to testify, they stood up and they said, Justice Merchan, this is unfair. We are not ready to cross-examine Jeff McConney. We didn't get notice that McConney's going to testify. We're being sandbagged. We're objecting to the testimony of McConney. Justice Merchan said, okay, denied. Okay, Jeff McConney, take the stand. McConney worked at the Trump organization for about 40 years, his entire career. He's testified at the civil fraud case. He testified at the criminal fraud case against the Trump organization. How much more prepared can you be than cross-examining someone who worked for your organization for 40 years? Karen, I want to go through McConney's testimony and specifically the documents. Alan Weisselberg took notes that were turned over, the Trump organization former CFO, to McConney. McConney took notes on official Trump organization letterhead that basically laid it all out. Here's the money to be reimbursed to Cohen, $130,000. There was $50,000 for some other payment to something called Red Finch, $180,000. Gross it up so that when taxes are taken out, Cohen could be perfectly reimbursed. Then give Cohen a bonus for doing all of that. It was all in the contemporaneous notations. Then, after McConney's done testifying, you get the Trump accounts payable supervisor, Deborah Tarasoff, and she explains, look, if there was a check going out for more than $10,000, Donald Trump's hands were on it. Either it was Trump himself, it was his son Don Jr., or Eric. And if Trump signed it, he would look at it, He would personally void things, but checks would never go out, ever, in the Trump organization if Donald Trump did not approve it, especially if it was something with his signature on it. And so Tarasov really went over the process and procedures for why it was that this would not just be somebody else signing on Trump's behalf or Trump not looking at what it was. Trump looked at everything, especially if it was over $10,000, Tarasov testified to. And then at the end of the proceedings, Trump's lawyers complained to the district attorney, complained to the judge that the district attorney was sandbagging them with witnesses. Judge, this is so unfair. They called Tarasov. They called McConney. We were not ready for this, Judge. This is very unfair. Again, Tarasov is currently an employee at the Trump organization. She works with them right now. She could have just as much been their witness for the defense. She works for the Trump organization. How are you being sandbagged with Trump organization witnesses? Finally, Karen, before I turn it over to you, Trump left the courthouse, and when he left, he said that he would be willing to go to jail over the gag order. He says that's a sacrifice he wants to make. That happened moments ago. Let me show you what he said, and then let me turn it over for you for all of your incredible analysis. Here's what Trump said moments ago.
It's a disgrace. And then you have the other thing that maybe is even more disgraceful is the gag order, where I have to watch every word I tell you people. You ask me a question, a simple question, I'd like to give it, but I can't talk about it. Because this judge has given me a gag order and said you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day. But what's happening here is a disgrace, and the appellate courts ought to get involved.
Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, what do you make of day 12 now that we're in week 4?
So the trial has turned to proving the elements of the actual crime Trump is charged with. We spent the first couple of weeks talking about the conspiracy and the overall picture of what was happening, this catch and kill scheme in order to influence the election. And that is what the trial mostly focused on, putting all of these records and what's happening now into context. So today is really where the rubber meets the road, as they say, where they really started on presenting the evidence of falsification of business records. And there is no doubt a crime was committed. They have proven that 10 ways to Sunday, that there was this conspiracy, that they wrote these checks, that Donald Trump signed these checks, that these were invoices, that they grossed up the wages so that that because Michael Cohen pays taxes in New York, he's probably in a 50% tax bracket. Plus they added some other things on the invoice and they didn't declare it for the election. I mean, there's no doubt that crimes were committed. The thing that is going to be, I think, a little bit tricky, or I don't want to say tricky, but the thing that is not as obvious is the connection to Donald Trump. And that's where summation is going to be critical, as well as Michael Cohen's testimony, of course. But they keep corroborating lots of things. But for whatever reason, every witness stops short of really saying, yes, Donald Trump did this, or I saw Donald Trump do this. It's that one little tiny step that we are just not getting to, that Michael Cohen is going to have to provide. Now, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. There was an example today. There was a piece of evidence put in. I think it might have been Exhibit 35, People's Exhibit 35, and it's a First Republic bank statement with handwriting on it. You alluded to it, Ben, in your intro, and it's an account. It's Essential Consultants LLC, care of Michael Cohen. It's the document that it's the account, the shell corporation that he set up, and the document has I don't know if we have it. I think we have it. If we can put it up on the screen. If we don't, but what this document has, let's see, is it has on there the $131,000 going in and $130,035 coming out, ending balance $965. It's very clear this is the account to pay Stormy Daniels. Now, the reason this is significant is the controller, Mr. McConney, today testified that he recognized Alan Weisselberg's handwriting at the bottom. There's basically the scheme that they talk about on there, and they literally have, it's $180,000. It says grossed up to 360,000. Add a bonus of add annual bonus of 60,000 to equal 420,000. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Plus $50,000 paid to Red Finch for tech services. And so you've really got the whole scheme on this document. There it is right there. Thank you, Salty. And you can see these handwritten notations here by Alan Weisselberg, and Mr. McConney basically said this is his handwriting on the left. He did not know whose handwriting was on the right. And so right there, you've got this criminal scheme in black and white. I mean, this is where they cooked it up. This is where it says it. But again, it's Alan Weisselberg's handwriting. It's Michael Cohen. It's Mr. McConney talked about it. And so it's, once again, you don't have Donald Trump right there with the falsifying business records. Now, it's clear Donald Trump was part of this scheme to do the catch and kill, part of the election. They definitely proved that, right? And they have direct evidence of that so far, but they haven't presented the direct evidence yet that Donald Trump knew that these records were going to be coded as legal expenses, and that he's guilty of falsifying business records because it's not a legal expense. And one of the things the defense did today was they were able to bring out that this is an antiquated system, their accounting system with a drop-down menu, and there's a place for legal expenses. I think the strongest thing that came out today is from the woman that testified, Mrs. Tarasoff, who still works there and has worked there for a long time. What she testified to today was that Donald Trump, just because he was handed a check, he didn't just sign them. He often would reject them. And I thought that was very interesting, that you would, anything over $10,000 had to have his approval, and he would often reject checks. He wouldn't sign them if he didn't like what it was, or if he didn't agree with it, or if he thought it was not the right amount, wwhatever it was. And although there was the testimony today describes a chaotic business with it's a tiny little operation for somebody who claims to be this huge conglomerate with all these real estate holdings, et cetera. It's a tiny little operation, and Donald Trump was very involved in everything. It's not like some big payroll department that goes out and handles things and he doesn't realize what it is. Everything had to be FedExed or hand delivered to him, especially on the account that was the Donald J. Trump account, not the trust account. When he became president, that account needed 2 signatories if it was over a certain amount, and it could be Eric and Alan Weisselberg, who's going to have been on several of these checks. But the ones from Donald Trump's personal account, he signed himself in Sharpie, in black Sharpie, and Ms. Tarasoff testified to that today, and she recognized his signature. And they put each and every one of these invoices in, checks in, etc., and went through these accounting procedures. And the way they described this entire organization, again, it's a small little shop that's somewhat chaotic and disorganized, that Donald Trump was very involved in. So I thought that was very compelling. But again, that's going to require a summation, right? Where the prosecutor is going to sum up and say, of course he knew what was going on. He saw everything of what it was, and he had to approve of everything. And of course, this wasn't for legal expenses. Why would he, on the one hand, he wrote in an affidavit in civil case where Stormy Daniels and he were in 2018. Donald Trump was trying to force her to uphold the NDA. Michael Cohen and Donald Trump stipulated, swore under oath in an affidavit that this was that she was paid this money, right? That this was money paid to her, and so he can't now walk away from that and say he didn't know about it, right? This is going to boil down to whether he intentionally coded it as a legal expense to hide it, as opposed to, oh, I just thought it could count as a legal expense. That is the one little area that I have to say is the thing that the prosecution is going to have to really sum up on. Of course, Michael Cohen, I think, is going to provide that direct testimony when he testifies, but they haven't completely closed that loop. Certainly not today, although they did say at the end of today they have about 2 weeks left. So we do have time, but we just aren't there 100% yet. But we're getting there, and this is the beginning of it today with the falsifying business records charge, because that's what they have to now really prove, that Donald Trump knowingly falsified these business records or caused them to be false. And so that's where I think the prosecution is really going to focus next. I think we're going to hear from Michael Cohen, who I anticipate will take up one whole week of those 2 weeks. And I think that would be next week if I had to guess. And so who's going to be the rest of this week? Interesting. Donald Trump's upset through his lawyers that they're not telling him who the witnesses are, saying that they're being sandbagged. Look, there aren't that many witnesses on the witness list. And the reason I'm sure we hear mostly from Mr. Beauvais is I think Todd Blanche, if I were to guess, is probably spending all his time prepping for Michael Cohen, since that's going to be who they view the big witness. Everybody else, their crosses are quite short. They just get in and get out. They'll give a few points. They did long crosses on Pecker and on Mr. Davidson, but the other witnesses, they seem to just be kind of getting in and getting out. So I think the rest of the week we might hear from Stormy Daniels. I think that'll be kind of the big witness, maybe on Thursday and Friday, but we'll see. That's going to be an interesting one to see how they cross-examine her. But they're upset that they don't know who the next witnesses are, but that's what you get when you say things like, "I'm willing to go to jail. I'll violate this gag order and go to jail." If I was the prosecution hearing that kind of testimony, I wouldn't tell them who the witnesses are either. It's not right. I mean, because what will he do if he knows who it is? He'll put some message out there, sending a message to the next witness who might have cold feet and might not show up. And then all of a sudden they can't prove their case. So I don't blame them for not doing that. I wouldn't either, especially when you have a statement like that. "Oh, I'd go to jail. I'd gladly do that." He's taunting the judge. And, this judge is not going to want to do anything that could potentially cause a mistrial. This judge is going to be very careful. If Donald Trump gets put in jail, I can imagine every single phone in the universe is going to blow up with alerts, including the jurors. And so they'll know about it. And if I'm the judge, I don't want that to happen, because that could actually hurt the trial. And what the judge wants in this case is a verdict, whatever it would be. He wants to get to a verdict. He certainly doesn't want a mistrial, and he doesn't want to be the one to cause the mistrial. So I think that's my assessment of today and how today went. I still think the case is going in extremely strong. I think there's a ton of evidence. It's very methodical. You got to put it in piece by piece by piece. Some of it's more boring than others. I think I said the other day, or maybe even this morning when we talk, boring is good in a white collar case. Drama is not good. Drama means, you don't want them to be able to make drama with your witnesses. So that's, they're plugging along, and I think it's going in well.
Do you think Weisselberg testifies?
That's so interesting because, and I've been thinking about this a lot, because Weisselberg is the missing link. Weisselberg is the key to this. But if you're the prosecutor, you can't call him because he has already testified multiple times and won't give up Donald Trump. So he's a big fat liar. He's been convicted of perjury. So the prosecution isn't going to call him. But the defense, if they choose to put on a defense, if they put on any witnesses, Okay, because you have to remember who has the burden of proof. Only the prosecution. The defense has zero burden. They don't have to cross a witness. They don't have to put on any defense. They don't have to do anything. But if they choose to put on a defense, but they don't call him, if I were the prosecution, I would ask for a missing witness charge because he's in their control. And he absolutely could, if Donald Trump didn't know this stuff or have anything to do with it, they could call him. It's hard to get a missing witness charge against the defense, though, right? But they could try to get a missing witness charge against the prosecution. And what's a missing witness charge? It's actually a charge that the judge gives the jury, basically saying if so-and-so were called to testify, you can infer that they would have, said something unfavorable. And that's why the basically it's a negative inference that the jury is allowed to draw by the fact that the prosecutor didn't call a witness that's in their custody or control. And although Alan Weisselberg is in their control, quote unquote, because they could just produce him from jail, they could just go get him and subpoena him. They would argue that he's not expected to testify favorably for the prosecution, that he's going to lie, and therefore they're not going to call him. So they shouldn't get the missing witness charge. But if the defense doesn't call him and they put on a defense, it'll be interesting to see if the prosecutors try to get a missing witness charge from them. But certainly if he doesn't show up on behalf of Trump, I would certainly argue it on summation, whether you get a missing witness charge or not. I'd say, where's Alan Weisselberg and why didn't they call him? Again, you have to be careful. You can't burden shift, so you have to do it in a way that's careful. But, the thing that struck me today that was really off-putting is first of all, jurors notice everything, right? Absolutely everything. And they see who's in court and who's not in court. And they notice Melania's not there. None of the kids are there except Eric. Why aren't they there supporting their dad, right? This is kind of a big deal. But Eric is there. And Eric is Miss Tarasov's boss. And that would be very off-putting to me if I was a juror. Like, if you're still working there and your boss is sitting there, and of course Donald Trump's also your boss, but Eric is your boss, that's intimidating. How could you possibly say anything negative against your boss, right? And so the jury's going to notice that. And I don't know, that just felt like intimidation to me, even if it's just subtle. But who knows? I wasn't in the courtroom today, so I'm not sure.
What'd you make of the contempt finding early this morning?
I mean, look, the fact that the judge only found him in contempt of the one of the four, it's the one involving the jurors. We've always discussed that's what the judge's third rail is, right? It's the thing that the judge will never allow to happen. I think that if Donald Trump, the judge, clear warning, you're gonna leave me no choice but to put you in jail. And I think if Donald Trump goes there again against the jury, I think you're going to see a potential that's where that's like if he actually does something to put jurors in danger or somehow scare the jurors or taint the jury pool or something like that, he's going in. I think if he does anything short of that, he'll wait until after the trial to sentence him, if at all.
Anything else, Karen, before we wrap up today that you want to talk about as we head into tomorrow?
Not that I can think of. I think the case is I will say I think the case is going in quite well. It's going in there's no big surprises. There's no witnesses who aren't showing up and refusing to come in. There's no drama. It's just kind of boring, right? They're just coming in. They're testifying to the things that the prosecution seems to be able to get out what they want to get out. So that I feel like it's going in well.
Well, thank you, Karen, for all of your updates. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I will be back tomorrow morning before court, breaking down everything that we can expect on day 13 in week 4. And then, of course, after the trial, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I will be back again to sum up everything that took place. Thank you for trusting us with this coverage. Thank you, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, for sharing with all of us your expertise. We'll see everybody back tomorrow morning. Also, don't forget that the live show with me and my brothers, the Midas Touch podcast, will be live tonight, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. That's 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. We will see you there shortly. Thanks for watching. Shout out to the Legal AFers. Shout out to the Midas Mighty.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.